Okay, so then I can go back and see who's making these errors. And you can follow, this is one approach. You could look at the pattern of the errors and see that the error peaks, the error between make and do peaks around A2, and then it seems to just flatline around V1. So you could say that from V1 you would expect that in the majority this make and do problem seems to lessen considerably, and the students, as such, they can do it. A lot of them, some of them still can't. So that's one way of looking at it. Okay. So I'm just going to give you lots more examples, just to get you to think about it and think about the methodology and so on. I'm still kind of toying around with this corpus of how best to approach it. Take the simple past interrogatives. We often forget about question forms. I just like investigating questions, so I'm going to look at the interrogative, past simple interrogative, just with did forms. So, did you go to town? That type of structure. At what level do students master this? Well, what's your feeling? At what level? A2, A1, B2, B2. Okay, so these are the error rates across the levels, and you see that actually it's I think there's a 33% error rate at B2. So even though the interesting thing then is to see where textbooks stop teaching it, you know, that's something we're beginning to see, that unlike vocabulary, the grammar is taught, teach and go kind of approach, doesn't it? You know, that there's very little recycling going on with grammar, and it'll become more apparent as we go through the talk here. That's something that's a big finding that's really dawning on me. So while the past interrogative did is used most at B1 level, and it's not mastered until B2, where the error rate decreases to 36.5. Now, you know, that's open to debate. Is it mastered at that level? Is that still a high error rate? The lexical patterns, as a corpus linguist, I like to look at the environment of a word. And we found that 75% of all of the uses of did in the Cambridge exams is did you. Did you. Whereas in the British National Corpus, which would be a representation of spoken and written English in all kinds of contexts, that pattern is used 50% of the time. So, I mean, I'm very interested in seeing how the exam as such sort of doesn't reflect, or the tasks, that there's a task effect on the language. So at C1 and C2, we can also see that there is an increase in the use of adverbs. It's nice to see the development as well of a form. So they only come in at the C levels, where people are beginning to use ever, you know, did you ever, and that type of thing. Did you ever climb a mountain? Did you really pay 400? Now, whose as a relative pronoun is another one that we looked at. And the woman whose house is next to mine. So what level do you expect students to be able to do this? People are putting it in around B2, C1. There's a kind of a strange thing in it, well, it's only a minor amount, but B2 is actually slightly better than C1, but again, that could be a task. Whose as a relative pronoun appears to be prototypically used correctly at B2 level, where the error rate reduces to 22%. And the patterns with whose, well, what we found, this is another thing then, the exam effect, when we look at the actual pattern of it, we find that whose name is, whose name was, whose, and the verb to be. Can you hear me without the microphone? Mm-hmm. No? No, I'm getting a no. So whose name is, whose name was the dominant pattern. That type of, a man whose name was John, okay? See there, from halfway down, you can see whose name is, whose name is, whose name was. You can see the pattern, and you screen down, that's going to be continuing on down there. They're just other examples. So, in terms of course books, B1 coursebook material presents examples such as the Lancasters and the family whose sons organised that fantastic Thanksgiving. So it's dealt with at B1 in course books, but we're finding this lag in terms of when it's actually learned. And that's the pattern we're finding. It's taking at least a level and more before you can say that students can do it. Okay. Okay. Looking at looking forward to. I just took this, just exploring this form. I thought when I think of exams, I think of letter writing. So this is just a typical letter writing formula. You know that you're looking forward to hearing from someone. And I wanted to explore the preposition errors. So what typical preposition errors are you expecting here? Looking forward, at, for, in, etc. So the corpus is brilliant in that respect. It can show you very easy. What range of errors and what level will they get it right? Well, let's look at that. So I put in looking forward, and the dominant error is looking forward for. It accounts for most of the errors. I'm looking forward for your reply. That's a Greek student. I'm looking forward. These are other types of errors. Looking forward from, hearing from you. That's Brazil. Looking forward in, hearing from you. Malaysian student. Looking forward of hearing from you. That's a Greek student. I'm looking forward on hearing from you. That's a French student. When I take the dominant error, looking forward for, and plot it. The error now, this is the actual error. It's a bit confusing because sometimes I'm looking at errors and sometimes plot them differently. So apologies if this is confusing, just do question me. So the error pattern itself, looking forward for, it peaks at B2. And what we keep finding is that B1 and B2, things go crazy. And that, I suppose, we know that intuitively, that intermediate, low intermediate, there's like so much noise in the students' heads that that they're trying to, everything's up in the air, trying out things, getting forms wrong, and it's that hypothesis formation in that Piagetian framework, I guess, that things are all jumbled up, and then they seem to come out, that that's just very interesting from an academic perspective. So you see here that it sort of comes out okay around C1. Here's just an example from an exam text. Dear Mrs. Morris, thank you for your letter. It was nice to hear from you. I hope everything's fine. I'm writing back to let you know what I will do with the things that I forgot, and also I will be happy to clarify the queries you have, etc., etc. First of all, secondly, thirdly, that they've been trained into firstly, secondly, and thirdly. And then at the end, you say, this is the drill. I'm looking forward to, would they get around your letters? But this is the point. This is such a formula for an exam, in these Cambridge exams, letter writing. It really amazed me that looking forward for error prevails up to B2 so highly, for something that's so expected, a form that you will be expected, your own guarantee is you're going to need to use that phrase. Okay, let's focus on something else. This is another word. Again, I'm just brainstorming about things I might expect to find in an exam context. I thought about in my opinion. Okay. So what patterns, when a student wants to write it in my opinion, what patterns might they come out with apart from the right ones? Yeah, okay. On my opinion, in my opinion, of my opinion, to my opinion, under my opinion. So in my opinion and to be of the opinion that are obviously correct. The others not, as you know. But these are the range of patterns that are in the corpus. So, it rains a lot in Ireland, so we have a lot of time in our hands to be looking at these things. So I just burned away at this, kept at it until I came up with something interesting to tell people. And my little discovery on this is They're all the different examples of the types of errors, just one screenshot there. What I did was I compared the phrase, in my opinion, in all different types of contexts, native speaking contexts, like an academic writing corpus, all different types of academic writing in there. A corpus of fiction, the British National Corpus spoken component, that's 10 million words of spoken language. The British National Corpus written component, and the Cambridge Can Code is the Cambridge and Nottingham Corpus of Discourse in English. That's a spoken corpus of everyday conversations. And then there's a business written corpus. If you can get that online, it's just a corpus of business letters. So I looked at in my opinion, yeah.
Sorry, these are frequency or?
Yeah, I just explained. They're normalized, so they're per 10, could be per 10 million or per million probably. I normalize them so that I'm comparing like with like, of different size corpus. So it's like getting a percentage. Okay, so in my opinion, occurs in the academic corpus, the fiction corpus, the BNC written and Can Code, all around the same. And then you have, in my opinion, doesn't figure very highly in business letters and in business documents for obvious reasons. You're dealing in hard facts. You're not interested in people's opinion about the invoice or whatever, or the order that they're waiting for 6 weeks. So the British National Corpus, the reason you have to kind of try and get behind these results always, the reason why it's so high then in the British National Corpus is because they included a lot of local council meetings where of course people were, in my opinion. So you see there, okay, that's how it is out in the, as Wendy was it said, in the real world. Then let's compare, let's bring the Cambridge exams into this graph, okay? So keep that in mind. You see how far ahead of how higher the frequency is in the BNC spoken because of the council meetings. The learner corpus just dwarfs that. Goes up to nearly 3,000. BNC was at 30, I think. It's just, and we're comparing like with like. So, you see the exam effect here? That the students have this phrase, in my opinion, that they just keep putting into the exam because they're obviously being asked for their opinion, discuss this, discuss that, what do you think? Now, those of you who teach academic writing are probably spending a lot of time on getting them to unlearn that. Stop using, in my opinion. You don't need that in academic writing. But it's very much part of the exam task language, the exam effect, if you like. Now, it's still raining, so I kept going with this one. It's not over yet. Must have been last November with floods. I then decided to look into the learner corpus to see, very often, I'm very interested in pragmatics, which is about intended meaning. And where you put something in a sentence, whether you put it at the front or in the middle or at the end, can have a different effect on the meaning, okay? So I wanted to see whether it was being used at the beginning of a sentence or more in the middle or at the end. The majority, the capital I represents then those, in my opinions, that are used at the beginning of the sentence. So more than half of the time, the learners are using, in my opinion, at the beginning of a sentence. When I compared that with the BNC, it was the opposite. The majority pattern is to have it not at the very start, to have it in the mid position. So, for example, these are all from the council meetings. These things are usually, in my opinion anyway, the results are often accidents. There has, unfortunately, in my opinion, been a change of attitude about which cases to prosecute. Terrible shame, in my opinion, that building was demolished, also allowed to go to rock and roll, and then demolished. So, what's happening there? The speaker they're softening. Okay, so they're starting to give an opinion, then they look around and go, oh, go back. Only in my opinion now. Blah, 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 blah. What's the effect of putting it at the start? So it's a downtoner when used other than at the mid position or end position. It downtones your opinion. The learner corpus, in my opinion, best means of getting to work is by bicycle. It has the boosting effect, like you're hammering the podium. In my opinion, I'm really looking forward to the next music festival. In my opinion, it seems that we achieved the aim satisfactorily, even though it was not easy. That might be wrong. A lot of people prefer cats to dogs, but in my opinion, cats are only interested in food, not you. That's great, isn't it? But that's used mid-position. That's a very good use of it, isn't it? Yeah. In my opinion, you should go on holidays with your parents. Now, that looks like it might be a bit too strong, but I'm going to show you the context. You do need to look at the context. But the point here is that the students, that there's a pragmatic effect as well going on here, that if the students learn the phrase, first things come to their mind is, in my opinion. Stick that down, and then put in your opinion. But they're actually, the pragmatic effect is that they're maybe over-hamming or over-egging their opinion. And just looking at that last one there, in my opinion, you should go on holidays with your parents. And if you look at the context, it's actually, I think it's used correctly to boost, you know, the reply. And the task was, I think, something like, write to your friend that she doesn't want to go on holidays with her parents, you know, the usual teenager issue. Try and persuade her that's a good idea. Dear Sophie, in my opinion, you should go with your parents because I think holidays are good piece of time that you can spend with your mother and father. You can do something different with them and enjoy yourselves together in a new place. Then after your holiday, you can also spend the rest of the summer with your friends. If I were you, I would do this. Write to me soon and tell me about your decision. Best wishes. You know, a woman of sense, or a man, I think it's female, that they're using it in the right way. Okay, this then, yes?
Sorry, you just said something that just gave me an idea. You said you think it was female. Does the purpose break down?
Yeah.
Demographics as well?
Everything. Yeah. What you had for breakfast before the day on the day. No, there is a huge amount of field information. Yeah. And I could isolate just females or a certain nationality and a certain age and a certain school background, etc. So this is another example then. Dear Carl, how are you? I'm very well. First of all, I want to thank you for putting me up for 2 days at the beginning of my touring holiday by car in the south of England. Too much information. I must tell you that, in my opinion, Brighton is very impressive. That's actually that's initial position if you take the proposition to be Brighton is very impressive. You know what I mean? So it is a bit